Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alpstead, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alpstead, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Seahawks fans, welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alpstead, here with Keith Myers. And we've got a special guest today. We've got Denny on, the owner and founder of the NFL Mock Database website. And it's a go-to place on the internet for all of us Seahawks fans that like to do mock simulated drafts, as well as look up pertinent information on the draft. He's got combine results. He's got past draft grades, all sorts of other unique attributes that fans would enjoy. Also does a comprehensive mock draft database where they have a consensus mock draft overall, where they take all of the drafts that are put into the system and accumulate those into one big draft board, if you will. And they also do the big boards as well. So it's a great place, a great resource. We're excited to have Denny on. Denny, welcome into the show. Keith as well. Denny, just wanted to introduce you to the folks out there. Why don't you tell us about yourself a little bit, where you come from, how you developed this idea, and then put it into action.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. My name is Denny. I'm the founder of NFL Mock Draft Database. So I've always been a fan of the draft. I remember being a kid, like 10 years old, sitting in front of the TV, watching ESPN all weekend, not leaving the house and just enjoying it. And that music, man, the music just brings back so many memories. And I'll get pumped up sometimes. Like when it gets close to the draft, I'll just listen to it while I'm working. So I've always been a fan of the draft. And I remember when I was younger, I would look up mock drafts, and I would find, I think at the time, the most popular one was the Hale Redskins mock draft database. And they would just list all the mock drafts. It was really easy to find them. You click on the link and boom, you're at the article and you can read about it, right? Fast forward to present day, and there's a lot of these mock draft databases that exist out there. They're usually just pages on another site. And I was like, you know what, these are great, but I want more. I want more information. I want to be able to, find a consensus. Okay, this is great. There's a huge list, but I want to know who Seattle's taking. Who's everyone guessing that Seattle's going to take? I want to have that information. So, being a software engineer myself, I was like, you know what, I'm going to take my sports fandom and I'm going to take my coding knowledge and I'm going to build something. And it started off as pretty much a carbon copy of the other sites, only instead of just displaying the first 3 picks, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to display all the picks, and I'll just leave out the analysis part, so it gives you incentive to go click on that link and go read about them. And my whole thinking was, I want to be able to provide the writers a place for people to find their mock draft. And I don't want to just take all their information and then it's just straight up stealing, right? So I wanted to be able to kind of have a house for them, and then fans all from everywhere can use the database as more like a Google for mock drafts. There's no reason for you to Google mock drafts when I have them all on the site. So you just come to the site, you'll see all the mock drafts, and you can go from there. And so over time, I've been adding a ton of features. I founded this in 2019, right in February, I think it was. So right before the draft in 2019. And over the course of the years, I've been adding more and more features. Like Bill had said, we have like the combine results. And the cool thing about this is, my site kind of makes a ranking for this player, right? So, say for example, I don't know, first name that came to mind was Greg Newsome, cornerback from Northwestern, right? So he's, I think, 33rd right now on the consensus big board. So the cool thing about that is now, if you go to like the Senior Bowl roster, right? If you go to like another site and you'll see Senior Bowl roster, you'll see a bunch of names that you're like, okay, is that guy good? I don't know. But if you go to my site, you'll see a ranking. The entire roster will be sorted by rank. So you'll see, oh, cool, that's a really good player. Even though I've never heard of him, if he's ranked 40th, awesome. He must be really good then. So it's a good way to kind of take that information that exists out there and apply it to these rankings, so you can quickly see, okay, cool, these are some players that are really well. And we've added combine results, we've added Senior Bowl. I have a biggest risers and biggest fallers page that you can quickly see which guy is trending up, which guy is trending down. We have the consensus mock, like Bill had suggested or had said, and I just recently added the ability. So before, it would take all the mock drafts and add a consensus. And with the recent trade with the 49ers and the Eagles traded down to 12. Well, with the Eagles at 12, there was not a lot of data there. So you were having guys like Dylan Moses, linebacker from Alabama, who was projected to go there at 12 to the Eagles, which is probably not going to happen. He's probably going to be more of like a day 2, day 3 kind of guy. But in the very early mocks, he was still like a first-round prospect. So those mocks, it was pulling that information from those mocks. And so at the time, I'm like, all right, this is the time to now implement a more recent consensus, right? So now I have a consensus for all the mock drafts. I have a consensus over the last week, the consensus over the last 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months. So you can kind of have an idea of like where players are trending. Yeah, there's just a ton out there on the site that I've just been adding and adding and adding. Yeah, I can keep going if you want.
No, that's incredibly fascinating. So you kind of set this thing in motion. Let the data, let the machine learning, whatever it is, accumulate the data, and put that out there. And you just make some minor tweaks here and there. But
right,
you kind of run this thing. You developed it. You put the user interface out there. You put it online. And it just kind of has this thing where people submit their mocks, the Sports Journalist, websites, CBS, Football Outsiders, Football Focus, Huddle Report, all those guys submit. Or do you just go out and grab them and then post them?
So it's a little bit of both. I do a lot of Googling, right? And so I kind of rely on Google to find the mocks. But there are people now that are kind of catching on. A lot of the smaller sites will just reach out to me directly and say, hey, here's my mock draft, which is great, because I'm probably not going to find them on Google because the keywords I'm searching for are pretty competitive. So reaching out to me is the best way to get your mock immediately up on the site. But yeah.
So why didn't you do this like 5 years earlier? So that way, when I was writing about Seattle every day, I would have had this amazing resource because, it's become my go-to just for information on the draft. Just because if there's something that you maybe don't have, there's a link to where I would get it, and it is my Google for draft stuff. And so I'm just looking at this, and I've been using it for a while, and then I just can't get over how much easier my job would have been if this existed back when I was writing. Well,
a lot of the stuff too that I've built for the site is I use it as a fan. Like I go to the site myself as a fan. A lot of the time when I'm actually putting the information on the site, I don't even read it or look at it. It's not until after it's live in production and you could see it on the site that I'm actually like, oh, cool, let's go look at that mock draft. So while I'm using the site, I'll think of like, okay, what else would I want to see? What's curious? So things like, when you look at a mock draft, quickly seeing, oh, this is a popular pick, or this guy is, a rare pick. And rare means that he's probably a player who's, I think, below rank 100. So it's a player that, I'm projecting that probably will not be a first rounder. So your mock draft, has that projection. And then the thing I've gotten a lot of feedback on positively is the which players are missing from this mock draft. And that's one thing that you just don't see, right? You don't get that information when you're looking at a mock draft. But when you see like, oh, this mock draft has a player who's like projected to be a top 10 player and it's not in this mock draft, you're like, why? You start to question things and you start to get curious about it. And I think that's the fun part.
So kind of speaking about player profiles and all that kind of stuff, two questions. Do you partner with somebody for player profiles, whether that be, specific scouting information, that sort of thing? The other thing I was interested in too, talking about a little bit, is your risers and fallers and what you see, what trends you see in that sort of thing. One player that just comes off the top of my mind is like a Quinn Miners, center from Wisconsin Whitewater, right? Early before the Senior Bowl, this guy was probably projected. Most big boards had him in the low 200s, 180s at the earliest, right? And he's definitely risen now to the point where he could possibly squeak into the back end of the second round. So a guy like that's moving up, 100 spots over the course of a couple of months. Do you see that happening on the back end? And do you kind of look at that information closer? Like, what in the heck's going on with this one player? Why is he moving so much?
Yeah, I mean, like the fun part about it is, you're able to go see that information yourself, right? You can go to a player's profile and see a graph, a visual graph of like, okay, this is their ranking in December, and this is their ranking now, and where are they trending, right? And I think Quinn Myers, for example, is trending up. I saw the same thing where he kind of came onto the scene during the Senior Bowl, with his pot belly and, looking like a rock star. So everyone's like, this guy's awesome. And then he was just manhandling everyone. So obviously his stock started to rise then. But before then, I don't think he was in any mock drafts because no one had ever heard of him. But yeah, I think on the site, he's like 90th. And the cool part about my rankings is it's every piece of data on the site accounts for their ranking. So for example, like when I have big boards on the site, people's big boards, I have people's first round mock drafts, I have people's team-based mock drafts. All that information compiles into the ranking. So even little bits like, which is a big help for the lower tier prospects. Not so much the Trevor Lawrences of the world. He's obviously number one, and I don't think anyone will even come close to his internal score that I have. But these smaller prospects, you'll have a guy that is right now projected to be undrafted free agent, but then he shows up in like the 7th round of a Rams mock draft, and you'll see, he'll jump up a couple spots because that's more data that this player has accumulated. That the other players didn't have.
So let's talk about data just really quick. And I don't want to bore too many people. I mean, this is interesting to some and maybe not to others, but to a developer, to a data scientist, it's all about the data, right? And and everybody that's in those sorts of roles, they're always seeking data, the best data. They have a hard time building databases because they can't find reliable data and so forth. Your situation is unique in that everyone kind of just hands you their data. So you know that the data is good because that's what you're using to formulate your consensus and so forth. So describe to me that process, what you thought it would be like when you started, and maybe things are a little bit different now that you've been in it for a little while.
Yeah, I know when I first started adding the mock drafts, I was adding it essentially raw. So if you typed in Bob Johnson, linebacker, Oklahoma State, that's who I put on the site. But now, after kind of learning some mistakes, I realized that a lot of people don't are pretty sloppy when it comes to spelling. So you'll have Bob Johnson, you'll have Boob Johnson, you'll have, Bar Johnson. You'll have all different variations of Bob Johnson. And so, I realized, okay, I need to be better about how I ingest this data and how I can,
without spending thousands of hours.
Exactly. So I was able to learn from my mistakes and kind of build it that way. And the site is kind of so now, like when you go to a player page, it can actually you'll see all the mock drafts that player has appeared in and what spot they've gone at, which is also a really cool thing. So if you're a fan of I don't know, Marco Wilson from Florida, cornerback. You can go to his page and you could see, okay, cool. These are all the mock drafts he's been at. And you'll visually see too, that like most mock drafts have him as a 6th round pick or 5th round pick. So you can kind of get an idea, even just for your mental, you don't have to trust my ranking, but you can mentally just kind of see where that player is ranking in most.
Got a really quick question before Keith asks one. So when you wake up in a start at 2 a.m. in the morning, you've been dreaming. Do you actually see the simulator running in your mind?
Maybe when I first built it, but it's been a while. But
that's funny. Okay, Keith, did you have some questions like to kind of steer the conversation towards the actual draft mock simulator that most fans listening might be gravitating towards?
Well, what I was thinking is more just like within the rankings, because this year is weird in that with all the COVID stuff, there was no combine, there's been for the most part, no team workouts, none of the usual interviews. We had half as many games to watch. And it feels like, to me, that the entire community has less information than we would do in a normal year. Are you finding that leads to more variability in where players are ranked, or that because everyone's kind of stealing from each other, there's a lot more consensus than in a normal year?
I would say definitely more consensus. There's been a couple of outliers where people have just gone completely against the grain. And to me, just having all the data I have, that doesn't appear to be what the trend is. So I would say that more, and I think the simulators also probably don't help with this, because you'll see that 9 times out of 10, a mock draft is using a simulator.
And the same players are showing up in the same spots over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you'll most of these simulators all tend to be the same kind of big board. They all have the same rankings, but that's kind of where the trend is going. Which I don't know if it's a good trend, but whatever. If you're using my simulator, so I'm happy. But yeah.
Does that point to the idea that maybe when we actually get to the draft, it could be fairly chaotic as far as looking at the trends leading to the draft, and then the actual draft and the evaluating of those players by the teams is much different than the actual simulators have been trending for the previous month or two?
I think this is going to be a strange year, and I'm worried that we're all going to be just way wrong with all of our rankings and all of our projections. And that's simply because, the lack of workouts, the lack of combine, the fact that these private the pro day stuff, some of these 40 times are just insane. How much can you trust it?
Right.
So
hand stopwatch stuff.
Yeah. So, and I'm hoping that the scouts, I mean, I'm sure they are, but that's pretty typical for pro day numbers. But since we don't have combine, we're kind of taking the pro day numbers as face value. So we'll see. But I am worried that everything's going to be wrong. And I think that's one thing that I'm going to try to do, because I can always tweak my algorithm to make the rankings more accurate, and unfortunately I can't do that until the draft is over. So, but the good thing is I use the same algorithm for every single season. So I'm hoping that I'm going to try to get my rankings as accurate as possible, so that way for future years, you can trust my rankings the most, right? So.
Yeah, one of the things that's been really hard for everyone, us, other analysts, and so forth, is we just don't get, we get about 75% of all the information. We get all the physical attributes, we get the combine results, we get the player film, all that kind of stuff, but we don't get the mental side. We don't get the interviews. We don't get all that information. So there's a big, huge variable in there that nobody really understands, that that makes it chaotic anyway. So it'll be interesting. So let's talk about the simulator on your site. This is probably the one thing that fans come to most, I would imagine, when they click on the site. They're looking for the simulator. They want to be the GM of their team. Talk to me about the process. Talk to me about what your site does that's maybe a little unique. And then after that, maybe we can talk about a couple of the other features on the website as well that folks would be drawn to.
Sure. Yeah. So, I had seen other simulators online, and I was like, you know what, I feel like I could build that. And, being a developer, like I said, I took under the task of building it. And, it was an iterative process. So I was able to add more and more as I went. But the good thing is, the things that are kind of unique about my simulator, well, there's one that you can save your simulation. If you sign in, you'll have your own profile, and then you could just run the simulation, save it, and then it's there. It's forever. It's yours, and you have a linkable URL that you can send to other people, which I think is kind of cool. And you have it. The good thing is, though, if you don't sign in and you do the simulation, you can still have a saved link. It just lasts for 7 days, and then it'll go away after 7 days. But at least you'll have like that kind of temporary solution. So some things that are unique about my site is, since I have multiple seasons, I have multiple seasons in the simulator. So if there's ever a time where you want to go back to the 2017 draft, and you're like, you know what, I want to do a redraft, you can with the simulator. It's not just the current season, it's multiple seasons. I also have future seasons, as crazy as that sounds. I have 2023 mock draft simulator, so you can jump in there and go look at guys that probably won't go in the 2023 draft, but it's fun to speculate and enjoy. It also kind of gives you like a almost like a head start on like, okay, who should I be watching next season? Who are some of these guys that are going to be good? Or, I know my team has a first round pick next year, and I know they're probably going to need a quarterback. So I'm a Bears fan, right? And I know it's a terrible situation that we have with the quarterbacks and everything. And so I'm thinking like, okay, well, who are the guys next year that are good? And so I have all that data for next year as well. So through the simulator, through the consensus board, you can quickly see who are the 2022 prospects.
Actually, that's very, very true. I, self-confession, I use it for that very thing. Part of our job here is to do the prospect shows, let Seahawks fans understand who's available out there that would fit into the Seahawks mold. And one of the ways that you can do that is by going through the consensus big boards, the mock draft simulators over and over, over time, and build up a knowledge base of players. Also, by clicking the links or copying and pasting names and Googling, you can search for different guys, and that's kind of how you build that knowledge base in your brain. And the other thing that you can do, the one thing that I wanted to point out about your site that's really fun and interesting to me is that it's you can kind of control the attributes of each simulation. So you can control the number of rounds. You can have any team. You can draft for 2 teams. You can draft for the entire 32 teams, your team, etc. You can control the speed of the simulation. It could be slow or fast. I like to do it fast because I just want to get through it. I want to get to my pick. Yours is one of the fastest websites to be able to do that, to go through a 7-round simulation. You can do that fairly quickly, like in 5 minutes. You can draft 7 rounds for your team, which I find really appealing because sometimes I just want to play for like 5 or 10 minutes on my phone. I go in and do the simulation, and that's kind of a cool thing. I would highly recommend everyone that's listening to go check it out. It's NFL mock draft database.com, correct? And that's where you can find all this stuff. And we really thank Denny for coming on. So let's talk about the other features really quick on your show. You've got the combine results. Obviously, we're not going to do a combine this year, but that's tremendous to be able to, after, I don't know how long it takes you to upload all that information, but after a week or two after the combine, you can go on and those totals will be searchable, I would imagine, by player. And then the risers and fallers, the trade value charts that folks like to look at or print out as they get closer to draft day. And the draft grades. Now I want to talk to you about the draft grades, right? Because
Seattle always gets Fs.
It's crazy. So I never saw that on your website before. I was like, oh, I got to go check that out. I'm going to go check and see how we did last year. And Jordan Brooks, F. He was our first round draft pick. Daryl Taylor, F. Damian Lewis, D. He was on an all rookie team, I think. I don't know.
So I will.
How do those get graded out?
I will just say that they get graded automatically. So okay. I don't do any manual grading. So what it does.
I was going to use that Charger fandom, against or the Chicago fandom against you, but I guess
yeah. Do that. No, it's all automated. The hope there is that when the draft is over, you'll get immediate grades. You'll know exactly like, okay, was that guy good? I think I'm trying to appeal to casual fan.
What is it based on? Like,
it's based on the rank of the player and where they were drafted. So if it was a guy who went top 10, but he was like 60th on my big board, he's going to be an F. Like he probably just will be. But if he's, if it's vice versa, where he's top 10 player, but he's drafted 60th overall, then he'll get an A+. So it's just, kind of plays on that. But it's a fun way to know, like, real quickly if your team did well or not, based on that. So, yeah. So I have grades for all the seasons, and those grades are as of the draft day. So if you go back and you see that I gave, I think, Tyreek Hill an F, it's like, well, okay, Tyreek Hill is obviously great, but I don't have that information of how he did in the NFL, right? All I have is the college information.
So when you're putting together all of this, and I know you're pulling data from a lot of different places, has there been any consideration for taking like all the combine data and putting them together into a some sort of like metastat for athleticism, like Spark, which
that would be amazing,
because you've got like obviously Spark is probably copyrighted because it's owned by Nike, but you have people like Zach Whitman at 3 Sigma Athlete who has basically reverse engineered that setup and has all that stuff, and he basically breaks it all down. And so you've got like, hey, this person you've got a raw spark score of 131, but that puts him in the 89th percentile of NFL players at his position, and that kind of stuff. So has there been any consideration for something like that, or is that just unnecessary at this point because it's elsewhere?
I think I'm always open to anything. The great part about me and my site is, I'm the everything. So you could reach out to me directly and with suggestions that you have, and I will respond to you, right? It's not like you're reaching out to a company, you're reaching out to a single person. So a suggestion like that, I'd be like, oh, that's really cool. Let me add that to my, my own personal board of like things I want to do. And then
how long is that board?
There is a lot.
How long is that? Yeah,
there's a lot. Yeah. And I have a full-time job too, so this is only like in the evenings when I get free time that I can work on this stuff. So the good thing is, with the upcoming after the draft's over, there's a lot of dead time there in the summer that I'll be able to work on some major features that.
I think that would be terrific. The athletic attributes, if you can measure athleticism as part of a database over a long period of time, you could really get very specific in advanced data analytics and stats and so forth, and attributes. it would enhance the predictability of success or failure at certain positions and so forth. I think that would be an interesting thing to add. So, question for you: do you have any future plans for your existing mock draft database website that fans would enjoy hearing about, or do you have other plans or other ventures that you think you might delve into as time goes on? It seems like you're kind of one of those guys that just gets an idea and then sets off to go about figuring it out.
So I mean, so the one thing I'm probably going to end up doing in the summer is rebranding the site to be more inclusive of all sports. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be, I'll be doing simulators for every sport, but I might add NBA, mock drafts, for example. Unfortunately, the other two sports, baseball and hockey, no one does mock drafts for. It's frustrating because I'm a big hockey fan, but there's just no mock drafts. In baseball, you'll find mock drafts, but it's really close to the actual draft that you'll find them. So potentially NBA. I have also plans for the simulator, potentially like a simulator 2.0. There might be some smaller stuff I want to add too, but there's always things popping up in my brain that, like I said, I'm a fan of the site. I use it as a fan. I'll add stuff that I want to see. So when you would mention the simulator, like you want it to be fast. Yeah, I did too. That's why I did it, because I want to just pump through some drafts, right? So, but like I said, I'm always open to suggestions. So if people want to reach out for ideas and how I can improve the site, things that you want to see, I'm always open to suggestions and please make it better.
Awesome. Keith, do you have anything more to add or ask?
I was just going to say, so the Seahawks don't pick until 56, but who are they going to take according to your model?
Oh, man. Let's take a look. So the consensus only deals with the first round. So there is no consensus for the Seattle Seahawks. But there's mocks with offensive line. There's mocks with cornerback. Unfortunately, like I said, there's no one player per se, but there is position that that Seattle's being mocked with. I wish there were more mock drafts for Seattle. I think people just don't want to deal with the 3-pick mock. But
I did a mock. More. Maybe I can run by really quick and see what you think.
All right, let's do it.
Check this out. Okay, so I ran a fast mock with a normal with a strict, or I don't know what you call it. I'm not on the website right now. Attribute with normal trades, and just kind of went about it as kind of normal.
You did the realistic
and normal trades. And so Seattle at 256, I traded back with the Ravens at 58 and got a 4th round 132nd pick overall in return.
Awesome.
And with that, at 258, I traded back again with Cleveland at just one spot, and Cleveland sent the 5th round 170 overall and the 6th around 212 overall. And then Javonte Williams was sitting on the board. Like, that's why I traded back with Cleveland one more spot, because I knew Cleveland was set at running back, and Javonte Williams, along with a bunch of other guys, were available, and I knew I could get a guy. So I got Williams, and then So
I want to ask you about Javonte Williams. So you just re-signed Chris Carson.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have Rashad. I used to be a 1st round pick, Penny.
Yeah.
On the team.
Yeah.
So why Javonte Williams?
Well, because I made a draft day trade and I shipped out Penny for a 5th round pick. And check this out. I used that 5th round pick and the 130 overall to trade back with Green Bay and move up into the 96th pick. Mm-hmm. And I picked Quinn Miners, center, overall with that pick. So I got my running back of the future and my center, and I won't keep going, because the rest of the draft was just normal stuff. But I was able to take those picks and a future not a future pick, but a penny to move back into the third round there and get my guy. So
nice.
But there's not a lot you can do. I mean, you've got the 56 pick. You can move back a little bit, but you're really not getting a lot of trade value with that at all. And then the other packs are just kind of, you might be able to pick up a 7th round or whatever, dropping back a little bit from that. That I think 130 overall is where we're at. It's most teams have more picks, a lot of earlier picks. It's going to be a little bit more interesting. I'd still run the simulator because it's fun for fans to be able to do that. So Keith asked you a specific question about who's available. Who do you think they'd pick? What do you think? What are you seeing out there that's kind of the trend? I know that we might not have a lot of Seattle mocks saved in your database, but just overall, what are your thoughts? Just as a fan,
I think you were pretty spot on with the running back and offensive line. I think like you said, Seattle's in a tough position because they only have 3 picks. They could be moving back. I think one thing that the simulator and my simulator and other simulators don't account for is trading players for picks. And that would be a really cool feature for the site, right? To be able to trade a Rashad Penny, like actually in the simulator, trade him for a pick.
Yeah.
And then you can use it immediately in the simulator.
You can trade future picks.
You can trade future picks. So if you decide you want to trade your first rounder from next year to move up this year, you can. That data is there, which is cool. And that is everything on the simulator as well is all free. I don't plan on doing any paid content with the simulator, so
which is outstanding. That's that alone right there is totally worth the click to get on your site and run this thing for sure.
I feel like sometimes feel like the Joker, just trying to add chaos. It's not about the money. It's just about, getting something that people want, fans want. Well,
you certainly want to be able to continue to provide the service. I mean, we'd hate to not have it generate anything and then go away. And then we're used to this great site. So do you have a contribution page, or do you do ads on the sidebars and that sort of thing to kind of at least pay for the site and some of the time?
Yeah, I mean, I do run ads. There is a PayPal page, and I have Patreon as well. But it's not something I require. If people feel that they want to contribute because they are a fan of the site, by all means, I'll be more than happy. But definitely not something I require at all.
Denny, you've been absolutely awesome. I learned a whole bunch of stuff about the back end stuff. I've always been fascinated in talking to somebody about developing that sort of a high end machine learning analytical database on this stuff, because I always wondered, like, how do people build these things? How do they accumulate all that data and make sure it all functions and does it fairly well? So I appreciate that. Keith, do you have any final questions or thoughts?
No, I was just going to say that I actually pitched this idea with this searchable database and everything to the upper management of Fansided back in 2013, 2014, somewhere in there, and got shot down. And here we are talking about this site and just how amazing it is and how essential it is for those of us that do, do this job. And it is way better than anything I ever could have guessed or came up with. I mean, the job definitely ended up in the right hands. That's for sure.
Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. I'm just, trying to make the best product I can. And I hope that everyone's happy with it. And if they're not, I'm more than happy to make you happy. So reach out to me and tell me how you feel.
Awesome. Great guy and humble. So you got to check out the website, guys. NFL mock draft database.com, and go have fun. Go explore. You can probably spend a couple hours on there easy, just checking out all the different
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners. Thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk. Keith is at Myers NFL. And the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.